Hello there, and thank you once again for joining us on One Idea Away. As you know, one of the main threads of our conversation is really truly around this issue of connection. The flip side of it is when you look out in society, you see so much disconnection that's going on. We're disconnected from ourselves, meaning what is really truly important to us, what makes us who we are, what is it that we really want in life and genuinely value in life. We're disconnected from a sense of purpose or a sense of meaning. We're disconnected from each other. We're disconnected in ways, frankly, just to deal with modern chaos, if nothing else at these times. And what I continue to hear people really truly longing for is this sense of getting reconnected. And first and foremost, that requires us to get connected to ourselves, knowing ourselves with a greater deal of awareness, greater deal of acceptance and compassion, and really truly getting to understand who are we and what do we want to bring forward into this world. Because when we live from that place, when we relate from that place, we start to connect in all sorts of extraordinary ways, and the ripple effect across our life and our work is just wonderful. So to explore that topic, we go into two different sides of this. Sometimes we interview some people with some very specific expertise, whether it be mindfulness or neuroscience, psychology, any number of things that help us better understand who we are and how we are and what we are even as human beings. And we also go into the personal journeys of those who have traveled this path, those that have walked down the path of disconnection and walked down the path of reconnection, and what is it that they learned on that journey that they're now sharing with others. And we've got one such story and journey to share with you today. And I will say this is a really truly powerful journey that this individual has been through. And having known Tom for as long as I have, I can tell you how incredibly transformative this has been in his own life, but actually even more impressively, the way that he gets to use that today. And it truly is also a very inspiring aspect of what's occurring. So I'd like to give you that sense of also when you do get really connected, how does that start to look? How does that start to come through in our lives? And Tom is a wonderful, wonderful example of that. So with that, let me formally introduce Tom Kress. He's a husband, father, son, brother, family man, veteran, certified life coach, motivational speaker, dancer, a very good dancer. I hate to admit that, but a very good dancer. I can admit to that. Athlete, friend, and so much more. After years of being in an unfulfilled career in the technical industry, technical fields, Tom became a certified life coach. In becoming a life coach, there was a lot of personal growth that was required. And it was in that personal growth that came a belief that he could and would affect change, specifically in young people. Now his talks on personal power are affecting change in many minds and hearts. His coaching and speeches open the minds and hearts of many who have lost their personal power through trauma, judgment, or any other way. Assisting folks in getting their power back is a dream come true. It's the dream that Tom is living today. It's a pay it forward type of thing. And that's fulfillment. Like I said, that's the life and the work that Tom gets to do today. So with that, Tom Kress, Tommy, welcome to One Idea Away.
Hello, Luke, man. It's wow, what an introduction. Very, very kind, and fortunately very true. So I really appreciate that last part, because that's truly what it's all about, being able to pay it forward. And 10 years ago, getting that opportunity to start at IPEC, God, it's going on 11 years now. And getting that opportunity to find my place in this world was phenomenal. And now I get to do that for others. Yeah. It's an awesome experience. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about that place in the world. What is that space? What is that message that just really is at the core of what you share at this point in your journey and in your work?
So my story begins way back when I was 7 years old, right? Might as well begin there. And I was sexually abused for the first time. And fast forward 10 years later, and I was abused sexually by 3 different men at 3 different periods for many, many times. And I never told anyone. And they stole my power. And I believe that we were all born to be powerful people. Every single one of us were born to be powerful people. But when we allow, through judgment, through trauma, through abuse, we allow that power to be stolen. And it's a long, difficult journey to get that power back. But when we do, it's amazing, right? And that's what my IPEC journey was, and that's what my own personal journey was. Just before IPEC, when I knew I wanted to make a change because I wasn't fulfilling what was in my heart. So it was that abuse that really just set me back. Never ever realizing certain dreams. I've been a very good athlete my whole life, but I've never played organized sports because I didn't think I was good enough. So I never tried, right? And now fast forward up to now, and through the IPEC journey and my own journey with my coach and therapists, that I have gotten my power back. I am now living a most powerful life. And it's amazing. It's filled with that compassion, that acceptance. That's the biggest one for me. And having those tools with me in my every moment has made my life a most powerful place to be. And now I get to transfer that to students through my talks, through coaching. And it has been an amazing experience, an amazing experience.
I want to talk about a number of things that you mentioned in here. I think probably the three things that just popped out to me. One is you used the word allow when it comes to our personal power. So I'd love for you to elaborate specifically on that. Second, you come back to this concept of acceptance, which I know has been a very important part of your journey. So I do want to dive into that. Then we can talk about some of those tools and some of the more practical things as well that help us on our journey. But let's start with that word allow.
Yeah.
To allow our power to be taken. What do you really truly, or what are you getting at? What's really going on there?
Good catch, because we don't necessarily knowingly do it. But if we're not living our powerful lives, our powerful selves, then in essence, we are allowing others to run our lives, to make our decisions, tell us who we're going to be as we grow up. And so that is an allowance of sorts, but it's not a conscious allowance, right? But then when you are living your most powerful life, that allowance is through yourself. You allow yourself to do the things that you were meant to do. And that, to me, when you have that power to make the decision that you want to make and who you want to be, that is the way to go forward. That's what I believe how we were meant to operate in this world, was allowing ourselves to do what we were meant to do. Mm-hmm. And then, what was the second half of that question?
We'll get to that part where the acceptance and some of the rest of
the acceptance.
Yeah, because that's a big part of the conversation here. I think I want to continue to clarify a little what you're saying, and what we're saying is that this is not a matter of allowing trauma, allowing abuse. These are unfortunately experiences that very much are possible to happen to individuals and to happen to us. What you're describing is that what comes after that is, as you begin to develop from that point, is becoming more aware and accepting or acknowledging, I should say, of the power that actually resides there. So if I've understood you correctly, and I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that part of what you're really indicating here is that we have that power already within ourselves.
Yes.
And it's finding our way back to recognizing the ways that it has leaked away from us. That be a way of saying it?
Spot on. Because the human existence is such an infallible or such a imperfect existence, right? And these things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And if, just as you said, when we're living and we're keeping in mind that we are powerful people, and when and if these things should happen, there are ways that we can move forward without it tearing us down.
Yeah.
And that's the message. That's my work, is getting that implanted in these students and in these young people, that when something goes wrong, it doesn't define them. It doesn't, that's not who they are. and who they are a powerful person meant to change the world in whatever way they were meant to change the world. And that's my favorite part of being out there and making that difference.
What was the, because this was, as you alluded to, I know a little bit obviously from how well we do know each other. I know that this was not an easy journey. This was not a 1 or 2 years and okay, I get to move forward with all this empowerment and then whatnot again. And so I'm curious if you could speak to, at what point were you able to start to get glimpses that things could be different, and that you could find something deeper within yourself once again? What's the beginning of that before somebody recognizes that, okay, I can really actually start to reclaim this for myself?
That's a great question, because along my path, there are many of those instances, right? But the first and foremost one was, so I was sexually abused from 7 to 17, and I graduated high school, and I failed out of high school 3 years in a row. And then I finally graduated high school, and I was meandering around with, no purpose and nothing like that. And then I got fired from a job, and I joined the Navy. And when I joined the Navy, I left home at 22 years old. And this was my first opportunity to see what I can do without my 8 other siblings and my mom and dad, pushing me to do this and that and that and this. And when I went out to the Navy and started to find my own, that was really cool. Oh, wait, you mean I can think for myself? I can believe in myself. And, when the ship stalls, I can get the ship, right back to where we need to be. I mean, it was an incredible journey in the Navy, just to find that I am a really powerful individual and I can do some really special things. And, so I won Sailor of the Quarter and, a lot of different accolades along the way that gave me the belief that I could do it. But then coming back home, it all came back, what was there before the Navy. So that was really difficult. But then I met my beautiful wife, and there's where life really began to change. So
at what point then, because part of your story, you even referenced this in your background, your bio, come back from the Navy, you've started to recognize some of these things in yourself, come back into kind of this so-called home environment, and it starts to creep back in and weigh back in on you. You've got a career that you pursue, a technical career that you pursue and stick with for quite some time, even though you knew it was unfulfilling. So at what point do you kind of, lift up your head and say, wait a minute, I'm not willing to do this anymore? Because I think this is such a difficult choice. I think there's so many people that are facing this right now, which is why I want to go into it a little bit.
yes.
Is, the longer you stay at it, the tougher it is to leave. The more money you make at it, the tougher it is to leave. The more people that rely on that income, the tougher it is to leave. The more beliefs that you develop as to, no, I've either passed my time or I have to continue to do this, tougher it is to leave, and so on and so on and so on. Something enabled you to face that. And I know it's usually not necessarily just one thing, but I'm just kind of curious, at what point did you finally reach and say, I'm not willing to go any longer without looking at this and really starting to find a way to heal myself and then to put something else out into the world?
So when I got married, and we had a baby right away, and so I did the thing that you're supposed to do, and I got a job using my Navy experience. I got a job in the technical field, and I became very good at it because my mom and dad were terrific at teaching us hard work. So all 9 of their kids were very, very hard workers. And so I did it. I worked hard, became the best father I could possibly be, became the best husband I could possibly be, and the best worker I could possibly be. Fast forward 20 years or so, just doing all of that work, making it all happen. I was sitting at work and going, what's my legacy? And that's a weird question to ask yourself, right?
Mm.
I was 40, I think it was 44 at the time. And I said, what's my legacy? Am I leaving anything behind? I'm fixing computers and I'm making a difference there, but who really cares? So that's where I began my hunt for how can I, because all my life, and I don't know that I mentioned this earlier, but all my life, Luke, I always felt that I could make a difference. I always had that feeling since I was a kid, because my dad was very, my mom was very compassionate and very giving. And my dad, like I said, was a real hard worker. He was a great example in that regard. But as I thought about it, I said, I know I was meant to do something else, and my legacy is not fixing computers that no one cares about. So that's when I started to delve into, okay, I read about life coaching, and I said, okay, let me see that's out there. And I Googled every coaching company out there, and there I found IPEC, who got to the core of why my legacy has not been realized yet. Is because I didn't think I was good enough to do that. I always felt, I mean, early on in my marriage, we signed up for Amway, right? Mm-hmm. So we were in Amway for a while, and I went to a lot of the conventions, and the speakers out there were phenomenal. They were really cool. And I was saying to myself, I didn't say it to anyone else, I can do that. I know I can affect people that way. So I always felt I could do that, but never, ever did it until 10 years later or 8 years later, when I got my coaching certificate, and I began coaching. And then I had this opportunity to speak to schools on this wonderful law, Aaron's Law, that's passed in 37 states. And when I spoke to kids for the first time, excuse me, that's when I knew my legacy is now going to be there. I now get to live a legacy, because I think it was the third talk that I had, that a social worker came back to me and said, because of your talk, a kid disclosed of their abuse. Mm. So I could die now and everything will be fine, because you make that difference for one child. That's worth it all. It's worth it all. So, but since then I'm up to 59 children, after seeing my talks, have disclosed of their abuse. And that is a gift that I got, and now they have. And it's awesome.
Now that's a statistic of success right there. So many things I'd love to explore. I'm just going to kind of rehash just a couple of things. Point about legacy. I think that there's a reason why, when you Google up the top regrets of the dying, and you look through that list, and there's the number one in particular. I'll say that in a second. But if you really look at the top of the list, you look at like the first 4 or 5 that always come up, they're still all about the first one. It's just
yes, they are.
Right. It's just different iterations.
Right.
The first one is that I wished I had spent more time having the courage to be true to myself, as opposed to following the expectations of others.
Yeah.
And I think that's just at the heart of so much of who we are. But when we think about that in terms of legacy, when we think about when we're at that stage of our life and we look back, it creates such wonderful perspective to be able to say the things that I think matter today. It's not to say they're not important, but do they really matter in the grand scheme of things? Right. And it just puts our perspective so much broader. And it's something I invite everybody here, everybody that's tuning in, listening today is just to consider that. It's 20, 30 years out from now. I guarantee you've got something that is whispering in the back of your mind. It's an idea. It's a desire. It's that calling to speak, to write, to coach, to whatever it happens to be, to teach, whatever. Right.
Right.
Think about yourself 20 to 30 years from now, and think about if you didn't do it, how will you feel then? how will you talk about that to your loved ones, to your children? And you're going to see there's some energy that's going to start to brew. And I think the piece that I wanted to go into is even with that stirring that's going on there, Tommy, you faced, two different voices that were kind of battling, as it were. And I'm kind of generalizing this a little bit, but two different voices that you're battling. You've got this one voice that's this kind of that inner teacher that's calling you forward, saying, no, there's something more for you, Tom. There's something more for you to be able to do. You can tap into more of this. And then you've got this other voice that's going, you're not good enough. Who are you fooling? You're not supposed to speak up about that. How did you ultimately reconcile those two voices so that the one could help call you forward and you weren't stuck where you previously were?
Great question. Great question. So it was one magical, very powerful, impactful moment in my coach training, where I had to be vulnerable. I was the guinea pig for the exercise that was coming up. It was the gremlin exercise, and I was the gremlin who had to sit there and tell his story in front of a room full of 35 people. And that vulnerability, I knew I had, because my dad was a very good, he was a very strong person and very hardworking, as I said, but there were times when he would have those vulnerable moments and he would cry, and it was awesome. So the vulnerability that I knew I had, I was finally put in a spot, put in a place where I can, as you say, reconcile why I doubted myself in the first place, right? And it's all because of something that happened to me, right? Where my power was stolen, and here I was in these moments of coach training and thereafter, slowly getting that power back. And now, now look at me. I'm a success. I'm nowhere near financial success, but the success otherwise that we just shared, I don't feel I could think of anything that would denote more success for me, is making that difference for a child. And let alone the ones, I've spoken to over 100,000 kids already, and who knows all that has been touched out there. And so it's those vulnerable moments where you're able to sit and be with, that ugly side of yourself. And you say, oh, now I know why you're here. Oh, you're here because all of that stuff happened. And then you go, but the truth is this. And when the truth started living through me some more, the more I wanted it, the more I wanted that truth. So I went after it. I read the book that really changed a lot was The Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, right?
Ask you about that. Yeah.
Phenomenal book. And I'm not a book reader. I've read that book 7 times, right? It's crazy. But it's getting to that space where you accept that what's happened to you, it happened to you. This human existence is ugly and sometimes difficult. But that spiritual existence that you have, that vulnerable spot where you can accept who you were meant to be, where you can accept who you are. Oh, yeah. We can spend the next 8 hours talking on that.
Absolutely. It's number one, I thank you for I love it. I love seeing guys come on here, get a little vulnerable and emotional and everything else. It's appreciated to see it, and it speaks to the passion you've got for what you do. And the story that you share was a time in which you were able to step in to be able to own your space. And I think vulnerability is such an extraordinary gateway to that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come back to this word allow, but in a very different way now, which is to allow yourself to be seen. And, when we allow ourselves to be seen by ourselves, like to really, truly be honest and transparent and just look deep down within ourselves and not cut ourselves slack, but really truly look and see ourselves that way. And then to be able to be in a space of sharing that so others can see you, even if it's just one trusted person, let alone a group of people. That's when that energy, that truth, that essence of who we are just says, yeah, I'm here. Here we go. I'm ready to show up. And it is an absolute, it's not an easy journey to be able to access that part of yourself, depending on what it's been covered up by. And it's you mentioned radical acceptance by Tara Brach. And I wanted to come back to acceptance because I think that's the piece that is also something that's very extraordinary about your story, and you referencing acceptance at the very beginning of this conversation. Acceptance is not usually a word you hear from somebody who has gone through significant trauma and abuse. And so I'm curious if you could just speak to, when you embrace that idea of acceptance, what does that really mean to you? And what is the role that it played in you really kind of unlocking who you are?
Okay, Luke, this could be a very, very long answer, but
Go for it.
because it's an awesome question, because everything that you said is perfectly put. And for me, it was getting into that vulnerable space that IPEC provided and that I wanted, and to be compassionate and to be accepting of myself. That was the difference, right? Because plenty of people out there are very compassionate and very accepting, but not when it comes to themselves, right? That's where it all changes. But over my period of growth, that was the focus for me, was to find that compassion and acceptance for myself, because I had spent 40 plus years judging myself for all that had happened to me. And that was so unfair, but it's all I knew. And now I was trained with a different point of view, or with the proper point of view, to get me directed to where I was meant to be. And this is where I was meant to be, making a difference in a child's life. That's a powerful thing. And to all you teachers out there, to all you nurses out there, you make a difference, especially to children, because you show that compassion, you show that acceptance for who these kids are. And that to me is giving power back to these kids who have it taken away, either in their homes or in their neighborhoods, right? So we have a responsibility as far as accepting who we are. And when we have it, when we have that acceptance for us, we pass it on. We give it to others to learn, to teach them to accept themselves and accept each other. And oh my gosh, especially in this society right now, we could use a whole lot more of that. And there's a second note of acceptance that I'd like to share.
Please.
A lot of us were brought up with a religious background. And forgiveness is a big part of most of those religions. This is completely different than that. Completely different. So I know that some of you are thinking, I'm a very forgiving person. Acceptance is something at a much deeper and meaningful level. And especially when you're doing it for you, with you, you will, I promise you, you will have a deeper sense of love for yourself that will make you just amazed that this was always inside of you, because it is. It's waiting for you. But it takes that acceptance, that vulnerable space, to be compassionate with who you are and find the acceptance that was meant, all of us were meant to have for each other.
Yeah. When we get to that place where we can accept what is, we can accept what we've experienced.
Yes.
We can accept whatever it is that happens to be occurring in our lives. It allows us to experience, see it, and feel it more truly for what it is.
Yeah.
And to not make it to be something it's not. And so when we have experiences and we correlate that to interpretations that we must not be good enough, as an example,
Mhm.
as opposed to just this is the experience, what most people don't necessarily see in considering acceptance is actually a pathway to freedom. It is not a pathway to resignation. So just because, we are accepting of ourselves or an aspect of ourselves that maybe we've given ourselves, a hard time about previously, doesn't mean that we may not seek improvement or seek to grow in different ways. It doesn't mean that we stay stagnant. It just means we accept that this is part of who we are. Okay, now what do we choose to do? Where do we choose to go from here?
Love that.
To see it and experience it fully for just what it is, right?
And Luke,
Mhm.
um, so 9 months ago, I lost my home. I lost everything to a fire, right? To a house fire. I didn't lose my wife, and I didn't lose my daughter and son-in-law, and my mother and father-in-law, who were living with us at the time as well. Um, I know for a fact that if I wasn't where I am with myself, that I would have blamed myself for, well, up until this day, I would have blamed myself that I wasn't home to help people. I wasn't home to maybe stop the fire, but having the level of acceptance that I still work on it. I'm not perfect at it, and I don't think it's ever a there. It's just something you continually work on. Um, if I don't have that, I'm beating myself up endlessly about what happened to my family and my home and
Yeah.
my dog, right? So it's amazing to be in this space now, 9 months later, and we're moving forward with building a new home.
Yeah.
And I don't have all of that stuff that I held for so long. I don't have it because of that acceptance.
Mm.
It's amazing.
I love that. One more comment I want to add, and then I want to just talk a little bit about some of your current work. Um, and Ashley asked you also about Aaron's Law, just in case people are not familiar. Just the one other thing, because as part of that acceptance, something else that you brought up, and I just didn't want to lose it, is this notion of compassion. And it's something that I just wanted to share because the way that you describe it is just spot on with this other sentiment as well, which is the way that Pema Chodron discusses this and talks about it, a very famous Buddhist writer and nun. She shares it from the perspective that compassion is actually a care and concern that is shared among equals.
Mm.
Compassion is not looking at somebody as less than and therefore in need of, being pitied or cared for in that capacity. It's compassion because we can recognize and see and understand who they are as a person. Maybe we even see parts of ourselves within who they are. So compassion is that care, it's that concern, it's that understanding shared among equals. And it fits so well what you described in terms of what you do for teachers, for nurses, for social workers. This is so much of the compassion that is there. It's the compassion and what's passed along is that recognition of I do care, I am concerned, I do have an understanding, and you are an equal in this process. And that in and of itself is an invitation for somebody to begin to reclaim their power.
Luke, on the onset of this call, you talked about connectedness, right?
Yeah.
And those connections are strengthened and fortified by just that, the compassion that we have for one another and ourselves, that vulnerable space where you can be with someone and you don't have to say anything. You're just there with them,
Yeah.
connecting with them in their grief, in their pain, and whatever it is they're going through, in their joy. And I feel the links in that chain of connectedness is compassion, that acceptance, and that vulnerability. All three of those are the three main ingredients to our universe being connected, all of us being connected. That's what it is.
Tommy, when you get hired by a school district or otherwise, you get that chance to, be in front of a room of kids. What's the focus of your talk? What's your main talk? What's the main, message that you get to convey to our youth?
I start out with a song that my nephew and I wrote 2 summers ago. And the song is called I Am Powerful. That's what I start with. And that's the basis of my Aaron's Law talk. And if you don't mind, I'll talk about Aaron's Law. So Aaron's Law is a young lady from Illinois here, passed a law that mandates school districts to speak on sexual abuse awareness and prevention. And it was passed here in Illinois first, and it was just recently passed this past year in New York and New Jersey. Mm-hmm. So hopefully I can come out and speak out by you, but that'd be great. But when I go out there and I'm speaking to the kids, yes, we do talk about safe touch and unsafe touch and safe secrets and unsafe secrets. But the focus of my talk is to remind them that they are the powerful ones, right? I don't care if anyone's bigger than you. I don't care how much older than you, what kind of job they have. It does not matter. No one has a right to inappropriately touch you. And you have the power to say no, and you have the power to tell someone. Those are two things I did not do. And when they learn my story, it's, it just brings gasps and all of that, oh my gosh, this guy up here, this huge guy that's dancing around the room, he was hurt like me. And this is where I believe I give that, that tangible feeling of, oh, okay, maybe I can tell someone that someone hurt me, either physically or emotionally or sexually, whatever it is, someone hurt me, I can tell someone about that. Because I also talk about their brain, how their brain is not fully developed until they're 25 years old. So there are some things that they cannot process right now. So they need help doing that. So you can tell someone, your own personal hero, go to them, let them know, right? So it's all about giving them the power that they begin the conversation. They can tell someone no if they're making them feel uncomfortable. And that's the basis of the talk is you are powerful. Don't forget that.
Yeah. It's something you alluded to, and I just want to go a little further on it. This nature of putting voice to these types of experiences, challenges, traumas, issues within our life, I think is one I'm hearing more of in different realms and different ways. And I'm really excited by, because there has been, and it's so difficult at times to even wrap my head around it, but the stigma that is applied to any number of, whether it be mental health issues, abuse issues, being somebody who can admit that something has occurred or otherwise, we keep so much bottled up. We keep so much, it's secret and put away. And that's actually what creates the stigma. That's actually what creates, even I hate to say, some of the safety of allowing violators to move forward. And yet the more that we talk about it, the more that we put it out in the open, we not only start to reclaim that for ourselves, but as you found in the example that you're setting for these kids, is you're not alone. So we talk about this idea of connected. And one of the ways that we also connect to ourselves is also in connecting with others. When we recognize that we're actually not all that different. We may not have the same experiences, but we're not alone in this journey. And in some instances, there are people who have been through the same really difficult circumstances that I have as well. We only know that by claiming the power of voice.
Yeah.
And that's so much, I think, one of the many incredible things that you are enabling to be paid forward and allowing that ripple effect to occur, so that you're at least fully aware of 59 individuals who have come forward. Right. And there very well may be quite a bit more than that who have, out of the incredible number of 100,000 people that you've spoken to at this point. So I guess, Tommy, maybe the way I'd like to kind of bring this to a close, to a head, connectedness is one of the ways that I talk about so much of the way that this comes together. The connectedness of being true to ourselves and connecting to ourselves, the connectedness that we feel in sharing and being in bond with others. What does connectedness mean and look like and feel to you at this point in your life?
Well, it starts with, first and foremost, how I'm connected to me, how I'm connected to my purpose, how I'm connected to how I feel, just having a focus of me. And because, and I'm sure you're very aware of this, that plenty of people these days and in the past have been brought up to think about yourself as selfish, right? And that is that is so wrong to tell someone, because we need to think about ourselves more, especially in that deep, vulnerable space. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we do a really, really shitty job taking care of others, right? That's my belief, because I mean, I believe I'm taking better care of my family now than I ever have. And I worked really hard at it when I started, right? But now that I'm connected to who I am and what I was meant to do and who I'm being every day, that connection ripples down into my family and into my brothers and sisters' kids. I am so connected to most, if not all, of my nieces and nephews, which are about 28 of them. And it's amazing how I have relationships with just about every single one of them because that connectedness that I have with myself now is so tight. It's unbreakable, I feel. And that's what I'm trying to get others to. So that connectedness, and then being able to be connected with my friends the way I am. I mean, I speak to you maybe twice a year. We text, we give each other crap about our teams. And we have, ever since I've known you, we've had a great connectedness. Why? Probably because we took the time to understand each other first.
Yeah.
That having that compassion, having that acceptance for who someone else is. I mean, it took a long time for me to accept that you were a Jets fan. And then to accept that you're a Yankees fan on top of that. Oh, God.
You had to get that in. I've been driving you nuts for 45 minutes trying to get that in. Tom, I really appreciate it. And I do just want to kind of reiterate that one point that you just brought up in describing connectedness, is that when we do focus first on that connectedness to self, you described it as that connectedness to that deep, vulnerable place within ourselves that we're actually looking to better understand and see and allow out. And I think that's the part that's so critical in this, is that when we talk about putting yourself first, we're not talking about, just blowing everybody else off and doing the things that your ego wants to do or otherwise.
Right.
We're talking about put your real, true essence, core self first, and spend the time to get to know that part of who you are, and then allow that part out to be seen, connect from that place, live from that place.
Yeah.
It's a life like no other.
Luke, it's podcasts like this and others that do have discussions around just that very thing.
Yeah.
That brings more light to this. And I feel that this is changing. I mean, Marianne Williamson was running for president, right? I mean, this is crazy, and she still gets made fun of for her beliefs and all of that. But at least she's up there treading the path for the people who are connected in this way, who I feel, of course it's a biased feeling that we should all work on being connected this way, because it enriches every part of our lives. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Tom, I want to thank you for coming on the show, coming on One Idea Way. I want to thank you for the work that you are very specifically doing with our kids and within schools, as well as even just the promotion of Aaron's Law and making sure that more and more people are aware of this as well. Tom, thanks so much for being here. Oh,
Luke, it was my pleasure. What a gas it was. It was fun, and I wish you greater success, my friend.
Thank you, sir. I guess maybe just to wrap up, there's just so many things that I've enjoyed being able to reiterate to everybody today. I guess just that one that I want to come back to is allowing yourself to be seen and allowing yourself to be heard. Because the more and more that we tap into that part of ourselves, connecting very deeply to who we are and vulnerably who we are, to allow us to see that part of ourselves, to be able to allow others to be able to see that part of ourselves, and to be able to use our voice in the way that we share and express from that place, as well as share and express the experiences that we may be going through at any given time. that allows us to connect to our personal power. It allows us to begin to connect to other people into life from that place as well. And that is something that's a ripple effect that I think we all want to be part of. So I want to thank you once again for tuning into One Idea Away. And as always, continue to enjoy the journey. Check out IPEC's coach training program at ipeccoaching.com/OIA. And of course, to find out about all the conversations, events, gatherings, all the things that we've got upcoming, then head on over to oneideaaway.com/community. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please do us the favor of subscribing, reviewing the show, as well as sharing insights or comments that stood out for you in this episode.